What's up, YouTube? Hello, knife people. You're watching Ink&Iron. I'm Joe, and today we are going to talk about my first knife that I ever owned. There may have been like a Victorinox or something before this, but this right here, this Gerber knife, is the first folding knife that I ever really carried. I got it at 16 from my friend Cody. He happened to have the same knife, so he bought me an identical one. And mine survives. His has taken some serious hits. If I ever get a chance to show it to you on this channel, I will. I believe it caught a welding arc and lost its tip. It has had bad things happen to it, even worse than what I've put this knife through. And let's talk a little bit about that today. So at 16 years old, I was not super responsible with this. You can see it has no pocket clip, so this was often just jangling around in my pocket. Not a huge problem at the time. I carried a wallet in my back pocket and a cell phone, and that was pretty much it. This is a budget knife for sure. This is the Gerber Profile 2 folding knife. It is a liner lock. You can see my liner lock travels over quite a ways. We do have blade play. Let me see if I can show you. Can you see it? That thumb stud flexing away from the handle scale. You can definitely hear it. Mic's up here today. So yeah, I think I introduced some lock rock when I actually batoned with it. You can see the spine damage on here. I was putting it through a piece of wood. I was 16, and instead of using another piece of wood to drive it down, I used a rock. So I just smashed this thing through the wood, and it did survive. I'll give it that. Yeah, the lock mechanism took some damage, but ultimately this thing is still carryable. This is a Chinese mystery steel, I believe. I think Gerber, if they call it anything, just calls it a surgical steel. So yeah, I don't really know. It's super soft, which came in handy when I was learning sharpening, because I needed my one knife that I ever carried to cut, and so I learned to sharpen on this guy, and that turned out to be super useful. The jimping on the back, not super functional. Going back to the blade, this is a saber grind, so you have a flat up here into a hollow grind into the final tertiary bevel on there. So it's interesting. It is a drop point. You can see it come down. It has a swedge, cut out at the top to reduce weight, I guess, or just to look cool. Not really sure. The coating on this blade is titanium, I think, and it's held up really, really well. Probably better than most of the black coatings I see on blades. So good job, Gerber, on that one. I mean, obviously there's some damage, but over a decade of use will do that. This blade is semi-retired at this point. I don't carry it often. But yeah, no real rust to speak of. We got some Teflon washers in there, if you can maybe see a piece of it. Let me see if I can focus. Now I'll have to turn the camera around for some close-ups when I get home. There is only a thumb stud notch on this side of the handle, not on this side, so it's really a right-handed knife, which is kind of unfortunate. You can use it lefty. It does break in nicely. The action to close is pretty good, but just missing that little kind of groove to aim your thumb. It's just not courteous, I think knives should be ambidextrous, and you put a thumb stud on the other side, so why not? What else? This came with a sheath that I never ever used. I just let this hang out in my pocket. It does have a lanyard hole. I never put a lanyard on here, and honestly, I don't think I've ever disassembled this. I attempted it the other day, and these are either corroded in place or Loctited in place from the factory. So if I want to take this apart, it's going to be a real adventure. I don't know that I will. Like I said, it's semi-retired, so I'm not exactly looking to carry this all the time. This handle is fairly thick. I don't have my calipers on me right now, but I mean, we're looking at like cold steel, chunky Spyderco type thickness right here, which has always been pretty nice for my hand, especially with this rubberized grip. You can see the texturing on there. It's supposed to be their gator grip, I guess to simulate reptile skin. I don't know. It is really grippy. Like, it has really good traction, and it performs when it's wet, when it's greasy, all the time. So I got no problem with this, and it doesn't seem to rub off, which is another huge plus. So yeah, I like it. Overall, it's served me really, really well, and has informed most of my knife purchase decisions since I started the hobby, basically. Let's go to my desktop. We'll do some comparisons with the SOG Aegis and the knife I bought after the Aegis became illegal in my state. So that's a fun story. Let's head over to my desk. I know I said we're going to my desk, and we are, but just real quick, I wanted to show how nasty this is right now. There's so much dust in this knife. I've never really truly cleaned it, kind of wiped the blade and all that, so I have a bunch of junk up in these screws that are holding the standoffs. And then something I never noticed before, you see this little nub right there? There's one there, and there's also a whole bunch inside. I have no idea what those are. So I'm going to get this thing cleaned out. I'm going to use a compressed air hose, isopropyl alcohol, and like a soft bristled brush, just like a plastic, like, it's kind of like a toothbrush, but bigger. So I'll clean it up with that, and you will see it all nice and shiny on my desk. Okay, we finally made it to my desk. I ended up cleaning this knife, so all of our little screws and bolts and stuff are fairly clean. I just wanted to show off the closing action now that it's clean and riding on clean Teflon washers. You can see I'm not pushing the blade. And you can get it to drop shut. Kind of. It's not the smoothest thing in the world, but for Teflon washers on a thumb stud knife, that's pretty good. Okay, so in college, I decided after carrying this knife for about 3 years that I wanted an upgrade. So I took into account what I enjoyed about the Gerber Profile 2 and applied it to my next knife purchase, which ended up being the SOG Aegis over on this side. I think right off the bat, you can tell the aesthetic is pretty similar, although we now have a more polished, this is sort of like a polished satin blade. This is a spring-assisted knife, which is something I was going for at the time. I figured, why not? The action will be good and hold up over time. Unfortunately, I did not realize after getting the Aegis that it would quickly become illegal in Colorado. I think it was like 2013 or something like that. Spring-assisted knives became outlawed, in addition to balisongs and automatics, which were already outlawed at the time. So yeah, I had to go back to a manual, which I'll show you in just a second. But as you can see, comparing it to the Gerber, we have another like high traction handle. We do have some like inlays, hopefully that's somewhat visible. It's kind of hard to expose for these since they're so dark. There's high traction here. There's also a little like almost knurling along the handle scale as well as in the grip area. If I have any complaints, it's that really pressing, squeezing on this knife gets a little chewy for your fingers in here. But that's only if you're like really going at it. Yeah, in terms of blade length, we are extremely similar, and I actually remember like shopping for this knife. I was holding up the Gerber profile like to the edge on the screen of my computer and being like, "Hey, that's the shape I like to cut with. Might as well go with this one." This was also lightweight, has a deep carry pocket clip. The only bad thing about this pocket clip is that it's almost too strong, so this is actually my only folding knife with a lanyard on it. That way I can kind of get it with my pinky and pull out the rest of the knife and flick it open. Okay, so what did I do when I realized that my new EDC was going to be illegal? And since I carry a knife every day at this point, you know, what's a guy to do? Well, I took it another step up. This is not what this Spyderco Manix 2 looked like at the time. Oops, some schmutz on there. I have replaced the handle scales. These are like custom micarta ones from Etsy, I think. I have a Casey Lynch Northwest pocket clip on here, link in description. And I've also zip tie modded this. I use 2 just so it's like nice and stable. But again, you can see the pattern I'm following. About a 3.5 inch blade, roughly the same amount of handle material, basically the same cutting edge. What I got in the Spyderco that I didn't get in the other 2 was a choil, so you could actually like choke up on this, which is cool, as well as the thumb hole and this new, well, new to me at the time, the ball lock mechanism. Yeah, I think after about a week I was like, this is the knife for the rest of my life. And that was, geez, I'm trying to think, sometime 2013. So yeah, this has been putting in good work for me for a long time. I gotta say, the Spidey Flick is one of the best ways to open a knife, so I'm glad that I went with this. But you can see how the Gerber profile led me to these decisions, and this was the knife that really set off all my collecting. I was like, oh man, this thing is so cool. It's got a, you know, at the time S30V was like a super steel, and I was just like super hyped about it, and the rest is history. You're now watching me on YouTube talk about my knife collection. So yeah, and there you have it. This is all Cody's fault, basically. That's what it boils down to. Alright everybody, thank you for joining me for this knife discussion. I just felt like my first knife really played into my hobby, and just wanted to talk about it. So yeah, thanks for joining me on a more casual video today. I hope you'll join me in the future. If you like the video, hit like. If you dislike it, hit dislike. Tell me why in the comments. And just so you guys know, I did start a Patreon, but I'm not going to push it very hard. I would just like to keep the channel ad-free as it grows. Yeah, there will be bonus content on my Patreon. You get to see notes, ideas I have for the channel that might not necessarily make it to screen. Yeah, so just a little bit of bonus if you feel like supporting the channel. If not, totally fine. Your viewership is appreciated. Alright, thanks for joining me. I've been Joe, you've been watching Ink and Iron, and I will see you on my next video. Bye.